Welcome back to Satori Sounds. In today's episode, we explore the nature of creativity, how your environment and mindset influence this, and give you some practical ways to nurture your own creative process. We'll also discuss the importance of safety, experimentation, and helping reframe problems to unlock more innovative thinking. We hope you enjoy this episode.
I haven't thought about borders in a while now. Those others come and go. And we're in Cornwall as well.
Yeah, to be fair, I was thinking Sunshine Cornwall, that's where my brain went
Recording an episode in Cornwall.
First time, actually.
First time. This is outrageous.
We've done Devon, Cornwall, next will be South America.
I've done Suffolk. South America, that's the big one.
We're just going to go diagonally across.
For some reason, didn't do one in Vietnam, nearly did one in Vietnam.
We did. It was too hot, to be fair.
Too hot, yeah.
So that we'd have to sit in an air-conditioned room.
Don't want a Satori Sounds soup.
To be fair.
It's all creativity.
Pure creativity right there. She's unparalleled.
I've got a gift.
Being the authentic self, at least.
I've given it a go. Yeah, that's the way to be. That is the way to be. The sun is nice, though.
It is nice.
Yeah. I suppose
Should we go to the pub?
Oh, absolutely. I do my best thinking in the pub. Mainly after I've had a few drinks.
Liquid courage, that's what it is.
Liquid courage. Well, in ancient, I say ancient Norse, in Norse mythology, they say that they're all kind of creative people, poets, bards, because that was their creative people, artists, so on and so forth. They had drank a mead, a special mead, and that's where creativity comes from. So maybe there is some wisdom in having a wee drink every now and again.
In having a pint just to...
Get the creative juices flowing.
I think...
Wrong juices.
Wrong. I say pint creative juices. Well, creativity, I think sometimes you can have a barrier to it if you think you've kind of got to sit down and be creative. I think about this sometimes when I'm journaling, is that sometimes if I've fixed a time to do that, planned it in my day, I'm not actually at a point where I'm even feeling that kind of creativity. And that's what I've always found interesting about creativity is a lot of my work is process driven that I do. And that's easy. You can plan for that. You can execute and you can, deliver. Whereas there isn't really a time. I know when I feel I'm in a creative space, but I don't find it something that I can plan to just to do.
I think creativity in many ways is a lot like sleep. The harder you try and force it, the less likely you are to get it. You almost have to be doing other things to let that process take over there. And when I think about the idea of being creative, I'd say everyone is creative, generally speaking. It's the conditions that we surround ourselves that maybe restrict or recalibrate how we apply our creativity. So even in that process bit that you were talking about there, I imagine you probably have to get somewhat creative.
That's true. There is true, actually. When I look at how we structure projects and how we deliver some of them, the processes are often the same, and you go through the notions, but you have to look at different ways of addressing problems.
Yeah. Well, that's a big way creativity plays out in the human mind, I think, or life. That you have to look at different ways. That is you invoking your creative self to solve a particular problem or an idea. Or invoke an idea, rather.
Yeah, and also matching the two together. Because I remember when I was younger, I wanted to know the tools, the techniques, and the process. What do I do? What do I need to follow? And actually, what I've realised over the years is that the creativity part of that is that actually I have a toolbox of kit of stuff, and actually I use different ones to deal with different scenarios. And actually, there is creativity in that because we're dealing with a lot of people, different scenarios, but there isn't this, follow this step, then this step, this step. In cooking, for instance, right? There's a lot of methodology that you would just go through sequentially for sometimes doing a recipe. A lot of the work that I do, I now look at it more creatively, whereas I used to look at it very process, whereas you do this, you do this, you do
You
this.
look at it as more of a guideline rather than a set of executables.
Yes.
I think what I find really fascinating about creativity, and to add to that a little bit, that kind of process of executables instead of it being a task list, is that it's very free-flowing. That sometimes you almost have to come away from that and say, I do X, then I do Y, then I do Z.
Yes.
And do something completely different. Let your mind roam a little bit, and then it comes back. And I think that frees up some of that creative thinking. Not just creative thinking, but also that problem-solving thinking, because it's less pressured.
Yes. Well, I think the pressure point is... brainstorming, you could say, is creative and useful, but I agree with that, because if you're solely focused on trying to attain something, actually, as you say, that is kind of prohibiting your creativity.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes actually having some parameters are useful to what you want to try and move towards. But often when I look back once I've dealt with something, actually the process is only clear in reverse. And if I tried to follow a strict process, I wouldn't have achieved the exact results that I'd achieved.
I think it's interesting as well because the human brain is very threat-based. And often we can think of creativity from an evolutionary point of view, that depending on kind of what threat you're facing, and obviously now in the modern world threats look very different as to when they did sort of 100,000 years ago, a million years ago, you take your pick, when sort of people really developed that creative thinking or that, I suppose, imaginary thought and way of problem solving. They look very different now, the threat that is. And when you think about kind of how people will change sort of the emphasis behind their creativity, so if it's a very threat-based problem, it's like, how can I escape this problem? Maybe it's imagining an argument or a conversation that they're kind of going to have later on in the day. And it's just, I always find it fascinating to see how people end up using their creativity in those kind of threat-based scenarios, but then go, oh, look, I'm not very creative. So, no, but you are.
That's very true, because we're looking ahead and creating a scenario.
Scenarios that haven't even happened yet.
And
we're ruminating on it and we go, well, if that person says this, I'm going to say this. It's like, well, no, but you are being creative. Or perhaps they're being productive with their creativity. So if we think back to the CFT model of threat, drive and soothe, you've got that drive system where they're going, well, how can I solve that problem? If I imagine the problem in front of me, what would I do? If I tweak that there, that's you being creative. And I find that fascinating because we rarely talk about how you can use your imagination, your creativity to then soothe yourself and to calm yourself. And I think that's one of the things, when I think about creativity, we rarely talk about it. And I rarely see people online talking about it, that it's being invoked all the time, just in different precise moments. So whether you're imagining that argument you're going to have, or whether you're imagining that big project. But no one ever talks about that third option. It's almost unpopular to talk about the third option of how you're going to use your imagination to calm yourself down.
Well, that's because I think most people wouldn't label themselves as creative. If I think of the societal stereotypical creative, right, you're thinking artists, performers, you know, that is what the traditional understanding of a lot of people is for a creative is. And actually what you're suggesting there is this other side that actually we all have a creative aspect. And actually I think that's a really interesting perspective, that we're very good at creating situations that don't exist in a negative context.
Or it can be.
Or it can be. Why don't you, therefore, people use it more in a positive context to attain what they want?
Absolutely. And I think that way of saying it, when people pigeonhole this idea of being creative, you have to be an artist, you have to be a musician, you have to be making something. It's almost, I suppose in many ways, it falls in line with that way that society tries to optimize things. Like, well, what are you producing? That doesn't make you a creative. You're not creative unless you're producing some definable art. And it's like, it's not quite how it works. You know, you think about a random DIY project and you go, oh, I haven't got enough tools to fix this, I don't know, shelf or whatever. And you botch the job and you get it to work. That is you being creative. In that moment. And I suppose the rigid definition of being creative also ends up stifling your creativity. You know what I mean?
Very true. Very true. That reminds me of a really interesting book, actually, I was reading a couple of months ago called It's How to Be the Creative Force in Your Own Life. And I forget, I'll put it in the show notes, who wrote it. But he talks about problem solving versus creativity in that book. And basically, it builds on what you were just saying there, in the sense that actually a lot of us look at problem solving as a way of solving our, creating, well, how do I put this without saying the words, problem solving in the sense of getting rid of something, right? So if we're feeling unhappy or we want to deal with something, we'd look about it from a problem solving of removing it, taking it away.
So avoid the situation or to mitigate the risk that the situation produces to us.
Whereas creating is actually creating and bringing something into existence. And they're actually completely opposite ends. And I'm happy to say this, I originally looked at a lot of the stuff I dealt with as problem solving. People say, oh, Ollie's good at problem solving. And actually I'm learning in some situations where I can, instead of trying to say I want to remove that, actually just reframing it myself, because I wouldn't have said I was a creative person, and in the traditional sense, and saying, actually, what solution should I create to deal with this issue? I found in my own brain, I therefore look at it differently from problem solving.
Yeah, I see. So I would, to kind of lean into that, you're thinking about what you're doing in that moment. So you're almost becoming very meta. And you're going, well, actually, what am I doing now? Am I problem solving or am I being creative? And it's almost like a belief behind your actions.
100%.
That's so interesting that you say that, because there is this idea in CBT where we talk about kind of beliefs behind behaviour, and we call them meta beliefs. And often they talk about them in context of sort of generalised anxiety, so GAD. So when people are ruminating, you go, well, what are you doing behind the behaviour? But that approach there is also being used to kind of guide other aspects of behaviour, unconsciously when it's there. But in that description, it's so interesting to see how similar that is. Actually, when you're looking at what you're doing, what am I doing right now?
Yeah.
Okay, no, I'm problem solving. No, actually, I'm being creative. What does it look like when I'm being creative, and what does it look like when I'm problem solving? And then kind of weighing it up a little bit more.
Yeah.
It sounds like. Yeah.
Definitely. And it's helped me reframe certain situations to maybe come about them a different way. So if I was looking at one of the projects that I'm working with at the moment, we've got an air hangar, a bunch of aircraft that are outside, and we're looking at producing a hangar to cover these aircraft. Now, if I look at it in the problem-solving sense, the problem we're trying to solve is that those aircraft are deteriorating. When I actually looked about what solution do we want to create, you start to look broader and you understand, well, actually, not only do we want to protect these aircraft, but there's a story with those aircraft. Right. So actually, if we're going to protect them, how can we tell that story better? How can we help that museum bring in more revenue by delivering this hangar? And there's all these ideas that start to come about because I've reframed it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So your thought process has gone from what I would kind of label, going back to that earlier example of that threat-based system. I've got a threat, this is the problem.
Yes.
It's gone from that to that opportunity thinking.
Yes.
What can I do? What does this create? What does this lend itself to? And I suppose that almost ties in with that sentence earlier, that people don't lose the idea of being creative. They lose the conditions that make them creative. So as soon as you enter an environment where, you know, it might be really silly, but you don't feel psychologically safe. And that could be someone being not very nice to you. That could be someone putting a deadline or kind of maybe even something even more abstract, like an imagined scenario, whatever it is. It then becomes harder for you to engage those free-flowing processes because your brain in that time is only concerned with making yourself safe or surviving what it perceives as the threat to be. And I suppose that comes back to why it's important to then begin to see yourself, and you're coming from that way of going, I'm in danger, to actually I'm creating something, I'm making something new and exciting.
That's true, because you're enabling those conditions. Because if you're, I just think of that, if
the internal conditions rather than external, but
external, because it's how you're reacting to that situation.
Indeed.
Because it's interesting you frame it that way, because I can think of scenarios where I was under a lot of pressure for stepping up and maybe I was too junior, but I've got a better way of something we could have gone about doing something, but I wasn't prepared to talk about that creative solution because I was just trying to fit in and solve the problem because that's what it was. So as you say, if I'd helped reframe that condition in my own head, that internal element, actually that would have allowed me to look at things in a more open sense.
Do you think there's anything in that environment, and we're not going to slag off any employers or any teams or anything like that?
Oh no, we are.
Oh yeah, we absolutely are.
That's what we're here for.
Get out the grudge book.
I can't, it's too big. I can't even carry it around.
It's not even in the car anymore. But I was wondering, was there anything, I suppose, in that external environment that might have helped you kind of come away from that threat-based thinking? Or do you think they were more internal skills that you needed?
I think dealing with a lot of, when you do £1 million of construction projects, there is this perceived issue that a lot more is on the line. And so actually, when you're a junior member of staff and you don't quite understand, you kind of automatically assume that these people higher up know exactly what they need to do and all the answers.
Okay.
And getting chartered is probably a good example of this. Up until that point I got chartered, I thought, well, I don't really know what I'm doing necessarily. And when I got chartered, I still realised I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew a little bit more. And there's this kind of assimilation.
Does anyone know what they're doing? I don't think I've seen anyone that's no idea. We don't know what we're doing right now. We're just here.
Why are we?
Yeah, well, that's a good question.
That pub? No, it's the sun. I'm British. I can't help myself.
You can't control yourself.
But it's the assimilation, right? Of I gained experience, I learned a bit, I gained again, and that now, if I look back, that growth pattern has created the environment actually where I do feel safer to create because I know the boundaries and the parameters of where actually if I go wrong, that's going to have a real impact.
That question as well, that idea of I don't really know what I'm doing, that ties in really nicely with something called the anxiety equation. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Well, we've come to understand anxiety as two sort of components. It's made up of these two things. So the first one is this diminished sense or perception that you can cope with the challenge or the opportunity. So you go, I can't do this. I don't know what I'm doing. That's the term to use. And then the second part is an over-exaggerated sense of threat, which is that idea of we're dealing with millions of pounds worth of project. It's way more important. There's so much on the line. And those two components together, those two conditions equate to anxiety. Whether it's actually I'm dealing with a danger or whether I'm dealing with, a sense of I can't cope very well. They make up your sense of survival and threat system, basically. And I suppose it's knowing, to some degree, when you're falling into those two parts of the equation of actually, am I underestimating my own ability to do something? Or am I kind of over-exaggerating how dangerous this particular situation is?
Yeah.
Because they jam up your ability to think clearly, loosely, and then become creative. And I guess when we think about the idea of fun, whenever I think I'm at my most creative, I'm having fun.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I'm just messing around. I'm not doing anything serious. And I think a really famous example is that American ice skater recently. Did you see that? In the Winter Olympics. I can't remember her name. But she was just having fun on the ice, and she took gold, opposed to some other competitors who were really locked in, diligent. They were like, I need to suffer to make my art outstanding. And there she was, having the time of her life, just on the ice, having fun, doing
what she enjoys.
And you could see it. She, not only did she kind of look really good on the ice, but her creative process, she entered that flow state much easier than potentially the competitors on that day.
Yeah.
Who might, I don't want to assume, but might have been engaged with that threat-based thinking. And I think about that in my own context. If I'm under threat or if I'm seeing something as particularly dangerous, I'm not going to be thinking freely or loosely. I'm like, oh my God.
No.
I'm in danger.
I'm in danger.
I'm in danger right now.
You're fine. That threat-based thinking is actually interesting because that's talking about the things that kind of prohibit us being able to get into that flow state and creativity.
Whereas fun almost encourages us to enter that flow space and creativity.
To do that. So from your perspective, what are some ways that you found yourself being able to get it more into that creative space? What do you find personally helps you enable that?
That's a really good question. I think it really is doing things that I enjoy, letting my kind of attention roam freely. So sometimes I like to write. And if I'm stuck on a story, I will just write nonsense. Just free flow.
So you always find...
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry to say that.
That's my baseline. That's where I start. But it's not just that. It's like also doodling, drawing pictures, doing things I haven't tried before. Yeah. So, I talk a lot about screaming when we're in our private, and I'll be trying to learn a particular routine, or, maybe I've recently been trying to learn something called Sarada stance, we do stuff like that. But I thought, what does it look like if I just flow with it? And as a result, it made the Sarada stance better. So I'm like, oh, that's how I move my arm to get it to bend like that, or to
just
move like
experimenting
that.
and trying.
Just experimenting. And I suppose that's it. You come away from the task, and you don't even have to necessarily be doing something creative in that moment. Just come away from the task.
Yeah.
Doing something else, maybe like doodling, scribbling down different sentences, ideas, maybe even just flowing with your screamer stick in the garden, whatever it is. But doing something different. So that's how I encourage my creative juices to flow. And it's almost, I think of that Albert Einstein stereotype where he's in the bath and he jumps out of the bath and he's like, Eureka! I've got it! I've solved the problem. But he wasn't thinking about that. He was just having a bath.
I think there's a real value in that, actually, because when you're solely engaged and focused and you've got that purpose, as you say, sometimes you can't create that condition to allow your body to experiment and change. And I was listening to what you were just saying there with your screamer. My comparison to that would be golf, where if I'm overthinking my swing, I guarantee I'm probably not going to hit a golf ball. And yet, sometimes I've just gone out on the course, not thought about my swing at all, and had one of the best rounds of my life.
After birdie.
Right? More like bogey, but but yeah.
I didn't want to say that. Didn't just smash the golf game. Didn't want to turn it into a threat-based thing, but whatever. That's fine.
I'm not safe on the golf course. But it's so true, right? I think the listeners can probably resonate with this. The amount of times where you've disengaged with something, and later on, something has come through to you. I think the most silly version of that is when you're trying to remember someone's name or something, and when you're thinking about it and you're fixating on it, all it does is actually escape. You can't think about it at all. And then randomly later on, you'll be like, oh, John!
Yeah. It's the spirit on the stairs. It's almost like, that's the expression I've heard to describe that. You're away from that person like, oh, it was John. Yeah! Or maybe you've had a conversation with someone like, oh, I should have said that.
Yeah.
But you were in the moment, you were locked in, focusing on your agenda, your goal, so you couldn't get
attain.
It. It's like trying to force sleep or trying to force yourself to be hungry. You just can't do it. You've got to let it come naturally. and that does mean sometimes going away, doing other things.
What's interesting is listening to all this though is that nowadays a lot of people are looking for the 3 hacks or the one thing you should do.
Bloody optimization culture, that's what it is.
And actually, what I'm hearing from all of this is that creativity is almost the opposite of that. I think it's useful to have an intention in mind, right? So when you're working with the Screamer sticks that you wanted to improve. So you at least had a goal.
I had a general goal, but I didn't go, I need to do, for instance, and this is often I think the problem with that optimization culture where they go, I need to do 3 hours of Screamer.
I was going to say 300 reps.
Exactly. I was like, I'm just going to do it till I get bored. Yeah. And then that's it.
7 hours.
7 hours later, yeah. The obsessional thinking kicks in. I'm like, I'm locked in.
But actually, so creativity, we could almost argue, is only obvious in the reverse sense in terms of understanding the process, how you got there. And so for people looking for, well, how do I be creative? Actually, what I'm hearing is it's useful to have a direction in mind, but actually you shouldn't constrain that to the sense of you must do this, then this, then this. Absolutely. You actually need to, like a river would, it would naturally flow through to where it needs to get to. You're creating the environment for it to succeed, not following step after step after step.
100%. And there's a really popular expression, and people often use this in the context of Van Gogh, but they often say, to make great art, you must suffer. And it's like, okay, yeah, but if you read anything about Van Gogh, he painted his best work when he wasn't suffering, when in those moments of lucidity where he was just with his brush, painting, doing things. And I think that's part of the problem that we get in society. We're like, well, good things aren't produced unless you're working hard and toiling away.
Yeah.
Sort of. They're also produced if you're playing, if you're having fun, if you're doing something you enjoy. I don't think I know anyone that's produced anything else, just no, just suffering.
Pure suffering. And I think that's the balance. I think there is an element of suffering, I think, in the process. I don't know. I wanted to say this after we finished, but
too late. It's got it on air in this local Cornish park.
I've lost my train of thought.
Sorry, dude, I was just talking about suffering.
Suffering. If you look at, let's take the ice skater analogy that you were talking about.
I can't even remember her name. That's so terrible.
Show notes. That's what show notes are for.
That's exactly what
it's a bit like editing a good book, right? You make it look like you knew what you were doing in the first place.
Oh, I never do that. I want people to know.
I want to suffer.
Yeah, I want to suffer.
But I imagine in some of her training, there were elements of suffering as well that went alongside that creative process. But when she was in that zone and performing at that level, that purely was down to creativity.
I think this is the difference, because I think what we're talking about there is almost skills acquisition. She had to get it wrong in learning the skill, which probably sucks on ice, because I've rarely ice skated, but when I have, I've fallen and I thought, wow, I'm not doing that again.
I can't remember the last time I ice skated.
Exactly, you hit your head so hard. It was last week.
In the middle of the British summer.
Exactly. He's Britain.
We were in Courchevel, obviously.
Of course. But that's what I mean. In the skills acquisition, she probably had to suffer. But actually, when she had those skills and she was doing what she was doing, I mean, if she's listening, do feel free to correct me, but when you were doing your routine, or she was doing her routine, she probably thought, I'm having fun right now, this is what I want to do. Wouldn't it be fun if I did a triple twist or something? I don't know.
We do it a disservice if we were trying to say what she was doing, wouldn't we? We don't know that.
Absolutely. But or to think of something I do know a little bit more about, thinking about like Neil Adams with his Tai Toshi, who's a really British Olympian judoka guy. I think he was just thinking to himself, like, I've got to train really, really hard, but this is my favourite throw. I really like this throw. I enjoy this throw. It suits me. I don't think he had the intention of being like, yep, I'm deliberately going to use this every single chance I get. Should do this every year. I mean, maybe he did.
Maybe. But there is a balance there, isn't there, right? For you have to enable the creativity to grow, but there's also an element, as you say, of that skills acquisition for those types of...
But that's learning. I'd say that's what makes it separate. There's a separation between learning and being creative.
Yes.
You might link kind of creative concepts due to the learning that you've got. So again, thinking about your guidelines, principles, you probably have to work very hard to memorise those and learn those into your head. But that's very different to how you then apply them.
Agreed.
And I suppose that's where creativity comes out. It's an application of imagination. Whereas the learning, we all learn things, unfortunately.
We do. But learning... Say again?
Not me.
Not me. Oh, no, you know everything.
I wish. What are the lottery numbers next week? Should have asked.
I
would've
can't
told you.
put that on live broadcast. What was I going to say? Dude, if we won the lottery, I think we'd be doing this in a very different location.
Straight to Monaco.
Oh.
Disgusting wealth.
It's great. Disgusting. So, I just reflecting on some of what we were talking about, right? The idea of, and I'm trying to apply this back to how do listeners therefore be more creative? We've talked about having a destination, setting some parameters.
Having a valued direction, shall we say? Because I think the destination, that's the problem. If you've got, I need to be here by the end of the week. Your brain's not going to do it.
Yeah.
Some people do thrive under pressure, but again, that's that threat-based thinking. I need to do it. If I don't do it, what will happen?
Agreed.
That kind of generalised worry maybe creeping in. So yeah, that's definitely one thing, having that valued direction.
Having that valid direction.
What else did we say? God, I'm taking notes. God, what have we done?
Pause, rewind. check.
Cut.
We also talked about creating the environment to, as in giving the space to it. So as you just said, right, if you're,
The conditions, yeah.
you've got to create the conditions to be creative, and there isn't a one size fits all, right? But I think experimentation, that's something maybe we can come back a bit more.
absolutely.
The experimentation phase, right? It goes back to your point you've raised previously about play without purpose. If you're just experimenting to see, that the reason all these amazing things have come is actually because people were experimenting just to see what was possible, not we must do this.
Absolutely. It really was the spark of creativity in that moment and curiosity. We're like, I wonder what it would look like if I did this. I wonder what it would be fun if we did this. And we've been there when we were young at Ball Masters, you know, foolishness. I wonder what it would look like if... Yeah, tomfoolery. I wonder what it would look like if I drink this tin curry.
I was going to say, we can't say half of what we Josh, be very careful with your next words out your mouth.
But you know what I mean? You're playing.
Yeah.
You're not chasing an objective necessarily. And I think that's the point. As soon as you start to chase the objective,
Falls
it
away.
just moves further and further away. And that's where it becomes task orientated rather than enjoyment orientated.
It does. And I think also only in that reflective state afterwards.
Can you recap what you did? Yeah.
And then,
Absolutely.
so as I guess we are kind of giving a framework in a way, is that you have to experiment, learn and play. And I think a really good way of explaining it now for me is if I look at my career journey and creating my own creative force as to where I've got to. I wanted to be a graphic designer when I was a kid and realised actually I was terrible at graphic design, so that was never going to happen.
I've seen it.
You said, oh my god, you spurned me like this, bro. That's twice, one episode.
I'm just in violent boots to sunshine.
I then thought I wanted to join the IF regiment and realised actually I'm not in a position to fully commit to that, so it's not the right thing to do. I then moved into design consultancy and sales. From that, I then also worked in customer service, and I then did a building surveying degree. All of that cumulative experience of sales, customer service, logistics has created the environment that has enabled me to be a good project manager.
So you've kind of collected a series of principles, it sounds like, from different experiences that you then apply in various different ways.
But if you told me, well, in 30 years,
You need to be doing this.
and how are you going to do it,
You haven't got a clue.
I haven't got a clue.
Yeah.
And so I think what my takeaway from that is that not only you've got to be creative and reflective and have an understanding of where you want to go, but you've got to stay true to yourself. You can't just copy somebody else's, because I can think of many other people that play at the level that I play at with delivering projects, and they've got a completely different experience. There's a chap I used to work with who was very technical based, and I'm very strategy based, and both of us could deliver a project very well.
It looks very different to each other.
Very different. And so you've got to be unique and authentic to yourself.
When I think about a lot of, and I'm going to come back to artists, but Miles Davis never sat down and thought, man, I want to make what Duke Ellington's making. He was like, I want to make what I want to make. Sounds like what you're doing there. You're not going, oh yeah, I want to make what that tactical guy is doing. I think you said tactical. Technical.
Tactical was a useful. No, let's say that he was
tactical as well, but you were going, I want to make a really technical project. That's not what interests you. It's not what drives you.
Yeah.
You were saying, I want to make something that suits my style, something I enjoy, which was that strategy element. I think that's where I got the word tactical from. But it's the same, and you can see that across disciplines, you can see that across art forms, or even just kind of industry elements of practice, or even science. You think about scientists when they're making something, they're not going, oh, I want to replicate the same thing that this guy did. We don't get any growth from that. There's no point. It's not fun, it's not entertaining, it's not pushing the boundary. And I think that's the other thing, how I know when I'm in a creative mood, because it's exciting. I don't know what's going to happen. Let's see, let's go crazy. But in order to feel that excitement, you have to be in that environment, or you have to have the conditions around you where it's safe to kind of go, oh, it's exciting to make a mistake, but nothing bad's going to happen to me inherently.
Well, that's that safety and threat bit again, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because actually, if you've created the conditions where you can do that, and this podcast is another example of that, right? We've talked about this before. We've times where we've gone, this is what we want to specifically talk about, and it's been a crap episode from our perspective,
Oh,
hasn't it?
it's terrible.
It's terrible.
Awful.
Right now.
Yeah.
But
What do you mean?
other times,
You're not safe right now. Stop creating.
but other times where actually we've just allowed the conversation to flow, and we have the rough idea that we want to talk about a particular subject, but not necessarily the key points within it. We've been able to produce what we feel, and the comments can tell us otherwise, a much better.
I turn the comments off every episode. I don't want to see
We
that.
know you don't. You can't help it.
I love it. That's fair.
But
It's-
you know, that's enabled our own space to be creative.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting in the world that we live in today, many people outsource the creative side of themselves to machines sometimes, AI and stuff like that. Not process, but actual creativity. And they're like, yeah, draw me a picture. You know, what are you doing?
Yeah. Well, you see my drawing ability. That's
Yeah,
why.
yeah.
That's why.
You didn't want to suffer for the skills acquisition, so you could be creative.
Not at all.
Yeah, you thought better of it. That's fair. But I think that's 30 minutes.
I reckon.
Yeah.
We've done pretty well on that one.
Yeah.
I think the last bit I'll say for people is the final bit of creativity is also knowing when you're finished with something. And painting is a great example of
Never
this.
finish. Lock
Never.
in.
Lock in
Go.
forever.
Make that your lifelong project.
That's your final.
Yeah, that's my final.
Any final
comment.
comments?
Yeah, absolutely. Suffer with it. Don't innovate. Stay stagnant.
Perfect recipe for growth.
Yeah.
But painting.
Keep doing the same thing over and over and over again until it makes you miserable.
Push through that.
Don't do that.
And creativity's on the other side of that suffering.
I promise. The promised land of creativity is there.
But what I was going to say was painting is probably a really good example of knowing when something's finished. There's a point where that last blush stroke,
No.
that last
Yeah.
brush stroke is applied, and there isn't a technical bit that says after 178 strokes you finish. Only that artist knows when something's finished, and it's a bit like you saying we're about 30 minutes where we are. You have to learn in your own creative process, I feel, when something is done, and then you just have to let it go and let it be what it will be.
Sometimes it's not even, it's difficult because it's not even, I think it's learning to listen to yourself. I think that's the thing where it gets dampened down. Because then you can just be like, I'm done.
I'm done.
I feel done.
And so,
And then it's fine.
but I think people sometimes struggle to recognise that, don't they?
Yeah.
In their own creative process.
Yeah.
So on that note, I'm going to stop.
I'm done. I'm going to drop the mic now.